Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Non-Toxic Environment Show. This is your host, Andy Pace. This is a very special week, a very special topic. This is a topic that has been brought up to me dozens of times, maybe even hundreds of times in the last couple of years by my own clients, telling me I have got to do an episode on this and that this particular person is the right person to bring on to help us through this. Now, today's topic is going to be on, essentially it's going to be on brain retraining and the emphasis of working with people with chemical sensitivities, chronic inflammatory response, MCAS, mast cell activation, just PTSD from other health issues, and to talk about how we can get through this from a standpoint of retraining our brains, doing somatic retraining, working with others who can help us with this process. And I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Cathleen King about her Primal Trust program. Now, before we get started, please do me a favor and click the like button below and the subscribe. This will help us gain more followers on YouTube, get episodes like this out to the masses, which is what we want to do. And please feel free to share this to anybody and everybody who you think would listen to it. Again, topics like this aren't talked about enough in our space, in this healthy building space. And it's not just about building the homes. It's also about how do we recover from past damage and past illnesses and move forward so that these new healing spaces we've created can actually heal us. So here's Dr. King.
Oh, Andy, it's nice to meet you and be here.
I've heard your name so many times from clients. As I said in the intro, I can't tell you how many people send me emails or voicemails, or at the end of a consultation call, they'll say, you know who you should reach out to? Dr. Cathleen King with Primal Trust, because she's the one you want to talk to about this. For many years, I've referred people or talked. I haven't referred people. I've talked about these different types of programs for people with extreme, I would call it PTSD, from the fact that they've been dealing with multiple chemical sensitivity or SIRS or MCAS for years, and you get to the point where it's overload and the brain is trying to protect you. And I don't want to get too deep into the woods right now on this because I'm sure you'll have much more things to say about this than I will. But I've always told people, have you looked into something like DNRS or other types of, nervous system retraining or somatic system retraining, what have you? And I don't know. I know enough to be dangerous, so I apologize. But your name constantly comes up. And so to have you on the show this week is just really special for me. And I know you've got a real background of this, not from just a medical standpoint, but personal. You have your own personal health journey that kind of led you to this. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I started getting symptomatic about 20 years ago. I definitely didn't know that mold or environmental issues were a part of it at all. I was diagnosed with all sorts of things like irritable bowel, parasites, chronic fatigue, mono. And this went on for years where I had just an overreactive immune system and I was tired. And then I really, really got sick in that I got some type of infection and then I was never the same. And then I moved into a particular home and I really went downhill and I thought, oh, it's just the stress. It's this. Nobody mentioned mold or Lyme at the time. I was given an anxiety pill and Prilosec, and and that's what they knew, back then. And eventually I got, more diagnoses, the Lyme diagnosis, the mold diagnosis, the SIRS, you know, um, the mast cell, the POTS, the dysautonomia, hormone, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, what the heck? Like, how could I was so healthy. Like, am I really that cursed that I just keep picking up all of these things? And even at the time it was like, well, they said mold, but I'm like, what does that mean? I don't see any mold. Like nobody educated me Even like we kept trying to treat Lyme and all this stuff, and I was getting nowhere because back then we didn't understand this order of things of like what's keeping the immune system riled up. And at the same time, I want to say this. Um, Ignorance is also bliss
Mm,
because I didn't know that mold, I wasn't freaking out about my home and like in even probably more panic because I didn't have the money to move anywhere at that point. So I was like carrying on, like thinking it's Lyme and all these things. But I honestly think like if I couldn't have moved, it would have been even worse for a little while there. So I actually started retraining my nervous system. Oh gosh, it'd be about 7 years now, 7 years ago now. So, like almost 15 years into this journey, I had this epiphany about infections and toxins. And I started retraining, living in a moldy environment that I didn't realize how important it was to clean or move at the time because I couldn't see it. I didn't think, I was like, oh, it must have been a past mold exposure. But I started getting my function back. And
mm,
then I started learning more about mold. And then I tested the home and it was like, whew. And um, I did end up moving to another home that had mold, just less mold. But the point is this that I want to say I was diligent on retraining my brain and nervous system this whole time. I didn't fully understand that it would have been really a lot better to like completely get out of mold. I just thought like you just stay away from black mold. And I got my function back. Now I could still feel something was going on, but here's the thing that a lot of people don't believe that it's possible to improve your immune sensitivity when still in an imperfect environment. It makes it a lot harder,
mm,
but I was one of those case studies who did get my function back with very diligent um, practices addressing my nervous system and my brain function. And it wasn't just one thing like brain retraining, it was multiple things. That's why I teach multiple approaches. It's so interesting because once I really got my function back, then I moved to the desert. Like,
mm.
and then I did the detox that needed to
Okay.
happen like years prior. And it does feel better. Like, it's definitely a thing. I'm not going to say like it's all in your head and blah, blah, blah. It's way easier not living in a moldy environment. But
Yeah.
what a lot of people don't understand is that I do believe it's possible to retrain the immune response to some degree and to improve some of your cognitive function so that you can get your ducks in a row and work a little bit and maybe, either clean up or get out because a lot of people feel like I'm just stuck and I'm damned and I have no function and I can't move and all of this stuff and I really want to help people find the power that is still there even in those really dark situations, that there is a way to get some function back at the very least. I'm not saying you're going to fully heal in the environment, but I do see now working with thousands of people who cannot leave the ability to retrain their immune system's response to get some function back even before getting into a full detox process.
Yeah, that's so important because one of the things I talk about as a healthy home consultant, healthy home concierge, I work with people who are doing remodeling, new construction, or just trying to live in a healthier space
Mhm,
because they're going through exactly what you described. And,
mhm,
we're going through everything first of all, we're making the bedroom the healthiest room in the house. We're trying to get that
mhm.
6 to 8 hours of restorative sleep every night. We can't get that. It's kind of hard to function throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And then we slowly, move out to the rest of the home. But a lot of times they get to this point, my clients get to this point of, I just don't know what to do because everything is triggering,
Mhm,
especially with a mast cell.
mhm,
Uh, people look at a material safety data sheet and say, "Oh, I can use this because it has zero VOCs," and topic for another discussion. But that's like ingredients and products that can cause smog and ozone
mhm,
situations outside. Inside of your home, it doesn't matter if it's a VOC or not. Is it a toxin? Is it an
mhm,
allergen? Is it something that can trigger a
mhm,
response? And with MCAS, this is the most difficult I see
mhm.
because MCAS wasn't even in our vernacular 5 years ago.
No.
SIRS wasn't in our vernacular 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
For us, it was chemical sensitivity, MCS, and then it was clients that had Lyme disease.
Mhm.
And now we're learning so much more that chemical sensitivity is not the disease. It's a
Mhm.
condition caused by an underlying disease.
Yes.
And you mentioned dysautonomia. I have a niece with that, and so I know exactly what she goes through with that. Um, pandas with kids, pots. I mean, all these things. It's all sort of related to like mold exposure and bacteria exposure and chemical exposure, of course. But that being said, somebody calls up and they say they have MCAS. So now I'm trying to choose building materials for somebody that just don't have any smell. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter whether it's a natural smell or a synthetic smell. A strong
Mhm.
smell can
Yep.
trigger a response.
Mhm.
This makes it really difficult for me to
Mhm.
find materials, and I have to imagine that's the type of client that you probably deal with regularly.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, and this is the paradigm shift that I'm so passionate about making. We become victims and slaves to these diagnoses, and we're told, "Oh, this is what your body does, and so you need to avoid this." And they think it's like a life sentence, but what they're not being told, and this is the new paradigm, is that what's happened is it's less about the MCAS and more about the immune system that
Mm,
has now gotten in an overactive state. You've gotten stuck in something known as cell danger response. And your autonomic nervous system is basically running a program that's like on red alert for everything. You can retrain that response. You are not a lifelong victim to these things. And I've seen now thousands of people turn this around. And that's because they're starting to get this understanding of reframing what's even going on. Instead of saying I have MCAS, I would say I've got an overactive immune response. All right. Now you can find more solutions because you're like the ground zero is your immune system. So what's influencing the immune system? Yes, there's chemicals, but it's your nervous system's response, the ingrained response that it's decided to make every chemical a 5 alarm fire. We have the ability in our consciousness to self regulate our biology. This is really good news. And it's a paradigm that's not taught in the medical system because they're taught with what's known as a pathogenic model, like what is the symptom and how do we address the symptom versus a systemic model. Now, MCAS, MCS, those are all downstream effects of a nervous system that has went rogue,
mm,
and we're treating the effects, and we're not educating and empowering people on the cause where they have more power to influence that than they're being told. And it's great to have clean diets, clean environment, good supplements. Of course, it's all going to be part of the bucket of retraining this response, but to really retrain it, you've got to get into your neurobiological development, meaning what taught your nervous system to overreact in the first place? How long ago has that actually been going on? Maybe it started by being overreactive to people, a go getter, a type A, wanting to make sure you're always, showing up. That is the initial overactive immune response that just doesn't have physical symptoms yet.
okay. Wow. That's amazing. For many years, I would tell customers, clients, from a layperson standpoint, I would say your brain is protecting you from something that it believes is going to damage you. And
Yeah.
so, um, and I would get some flack on this. I mean, many years ago, I did a podcast on is MCS all in your brain, and I had that as my like the cell line for the podcast, knowing that I would get just an
Mhm.
absolutely horrible response from half of my
Mhm.
customers. But then in the show, I clearly point out, no, it's not.
Mhm.
It's a physical reaction. But if you are somebody who, for the last 10 years, has had um, all these different health issues related to either mold or chemical exposure or both, or even something completely different, Lyme disease. If you're somebody who's been suffering from this, wouldn't you like to have a protective body, your brain, when you walk into a space, immediately alerts you that something's wrong, danger? And that's what this response is. It's
Mhm.
alerting to the danger that may be there, may not be there
Mhm.
either. And so when you've been suffering with this for long term, you just kind of connect the two as being the same. At, oh, there's a
Yeah.
danger, I got to walk out. And at that point, then it just slowly gets worse and worse and worse,
Yeah.
because if it's anything that you don't recognize as a danger, I had a client many years ago where we built a house for her. There's 1,200 different elements that go into a house, roughly. She had to test every single element in a glass jar to approve it, so that she knew, she recognized the smell, wrote it down, that's what it is. And so when
Mhm.
she walked in the job site, walked in her home, she knew exactly what she was dealing with, because in her mind, that's how she knew. I've already would smell this. I know what it is.
Mhm.
Maybe I can't tell you exactly which one of the 1,200 elements it is, but I tested it. I know I was
Mhm.
okay with it. So that wouldn't send her into fight or flight.
Yeah. I want to tell a story. I had a client very similar to this. It was actually one of my early clients, and I decided to do a test because she was so sensitive to everything. And I was trying to help her understand that her brain has made decisions about the level of threat that might not be accurate. Like, yes, these things aren't awesome. And the level of threat that your brain has decided might not be indicative of reality. And she's like, "Well, how can I know?" I said, "Let's do a test." I said, "I want you to draw a picture of a spot, and I want you to put it on the wall, and I want you to look at that spot every day. And as you pass it, I want you to think about all of the things that you're sensitive to. And I want you to think that that spot is representative of chemicals." Within a week, she was allergic to the spot on the wall.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's unbelievable. So
Yeah.
it's just that it was that was it an adrenaline release that causes that reaction?
It was an association that her brain made. I wanted her to see that you can create an association of allergy, and I asked her to create a fear response to that spot on the wall and think about her sensitivity so that eventually her body would physically produce that response. Now, it's not that I wanted her to get worse, but I needed her to believe in the power of her brain and the power of the limbic system and the association making machine, and that if she can create an allergy, wouldn't it be true that she could desensitize an allergy? And that's
Right.
exactly what she did. She got all her foods back, everything totally functioning. This woman was like down to like 80 some pounds, allergic to everything, got her entire life back because she learned the truth.
That is remarkable. I mean, I think of so many of the clients I've had over the years, and it just makes me a little emotional because of working with these people. But they have just gone through hell, and they haven't been
Yeah.
able to come back from it. And it comes to the point where they just feel like there is no hope. And they lash out. They'll lash out at me. They'll lash out at anybody, because, you know, we are trying to help, and may not help because they're not at that point where they can accept that type of help yet.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Man, that is so powerful. I'm thinking of so many different people over the last 30 years that I've worked with that were at that point where they probably were making themselves so sick from the worry, the fear, that
Mhm.
everything is, it just compounds and
Yeah.
compounds. And
Yeah.
so then they feel like they have to move down to, Snowflake, Arizona to
Yep.
detox. But even then, how do they get down there?
Mhm.
What about the other people that live down there? And is it truly going to help, or is it just a another Band-Aid approach?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, and I meet a lot of those people as well, and what they don't realize is that they go to these other environments and often they'll find new sensitivities to worry about because the brain is now used to looking for threat and deciding anything new is a threat. And it is a hellish situation to be in because it's unconscious, it's out of our control. Our brain just keeps deciding more and more and more. Things are absolutely, not safe, and it almost takes like a full identity shift, almost like a full quantum leap to find a sense of self that is going to decide that it might have decided incorrectly about the level of threat that everything was.
Mhm.
And you're gonna have to retrain, like, every little thing, and almost feel like you are a different person, and that person that was allergic to everything is it's an old reality, an old paradigm of how your operating system decided on things. And it's it is an intense journey, and not everybody is ready to make that kind of a journey,
Hmm.
but it really does take this deep decision that I'm going to retrain my brain to reinterpret life itself. And that is how deep it needs to be, because the setup is often emotional wounding mixed with a chemical or a pathogenic exposure. And that crosswires the limbic system, the emotional center, with toxins and pathogens. And you've got to retrain the limbic system and even the whole nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, that you have a safety inside of you, even with um, highly emotional events, as well as toxins and
Wow.
pathogens.
So, in many of the clients I've worked with over the years, and I'm sure many that I haven't talked to, this is the exact same thing. Their sensitivity becomes their persona.
Exactly. Becomes an
And so,
identity.
yeah, it's their identity. And anytime somebody tries to help, they're so used to the help not actually working. So that
Mhm.
lashing out is, listen, I'm probably more sensitive than anybody else you've ever dealt with, and I know
Mhm.
this isn't going to work. And
Mhm.
they almost fear losing that identity because that
Yeah,
is them. Their
yeah.
sensitivity is their outward projection into the world, and they feel like if they lose their sensitivity, now they have no voice.
I had a client recently that I was referred to who was so allergic to everything, including her driver's license that had to be scanned at the airport to come here to do a treatment, that she couldn't have the driver's license with in the same room because it had been
Mm.
scanned. That I we got into some deep emotional discovery, and she discovered that her sensitivity was her way of controlling life.
Yes.
That if I lose this, then I feel out of control. This is the one thing I feel like I can control, that I'm sensitive to everything, and that if I can put everything in a certain way. And she could feel that response even as a child, this need, like feeling completely out of control. And somehow a part of her found a solution, that if I can control this thing that I can know will happen, I know I'll be sensitive. That actually feels empowering.
Hmm. Exactly right. Exactly right. I had a conversation just last week with Dr. Cowger at Amen Clinics, talking about, and she's a adult psychiatrist. We talked about how this truly is a absolutely enormous um, mental health issue in this country, all over the world, and
Mhm.
it's not at the fault of the clients. It's the
Mm-mm.
fact that this is how, again, they've built up their defenses
Mhm.
to tackle the day. And this is one of those defenses, basically saying, this is who I am. And
Yeah,
and as you say, if I lose this identity, I lose control.
yeah.
Wow, that
It
is so
yeah,
powerful.
and it takes a moment of deep compassion, because I had my own ways where my sickness identity kept me safe, kept me validated, helped me to finally feel seen. And these are deep needs. So there's a deep need to feel in control, and the way it's manifest might be very dysfunctional, but the need is real and it matters. So I want anyone listening, like, that need is important, to feel in control, to feel validated, to feel seen, to feel protected, to feel safe. We just have to find a way for you to get that need met in a higher and better way.
And I'm going to just kind of tease this. At the end of the show, we're going to be showing a link on how you can start the process, start to take
Yeah,
control of your life,
yeah,
and we'll provide a link to some free, valuable resources.
yeah,
You had mentioned something earlier in the talk about, maybe it was even off camera, about you can start to recover even if you don't change a venue. And this is something I
yeah,
talk about extensively with my clients. At some point, because you're trying to make your house or your apartment the that healthy sanctuary, And sometimes we can't even get to that point because of everything that they need to be talking to you about first.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but at some point, you kind of say, "Listen, change of venue, different apartment, different home, maybe even change of location." And for somebody who has severe mold sensitivities, this actually has been very helpful. Moving them out of Florida
Mhm.
and putting them in Idaho, you're
Mhm.
instantly in an environment that you're going to be free of the molds and bacteria that you commonly come in contact with. That doesn't make it
Mhm.
100% better. It just sometimes allows your body not to be attacked on the way
Mhm.
in and the way out of your home, and
Mhm.
so it may make things better. But you had said that you don't always have to do that.
Yeah. There are many people who, for various reasons, aren't able to leave their environment, and I was one of them. Um, and I have found that when they can address this root issue of their autonomic nervous system's response to life, the deep emotional work, a lot of neuroplasticity work, um, a lot of work to consciously self regulate that autonomic nervous system and limbic system, you can turn this around. Not that you're not sensitive or you're not reacting, but your function, the way that your physiology functions within that environment can improve. And if you think about it, a lot of you that are listening were living in an environment and having your function there at one point. So many times, you've had the capacity to live in mold and live in toxic environments and not have your function completely go south. And then there's just this tipping point. It is possible to retrain like your ability to not have intense brain fog, your ability to have energy, your ability to not feel flu like by targeting the autonomic nervous system. Now, it's important to clean that environment up as much as possible, but it actually takes the choice to live there and not be thinking I need to escape, I need to get out. Because when you are in the frame of mind of I need to get out, but I can't. That is a deep trauma response.
Yes.
That is like a child getting trapped in a violent environment and not able to leave. You're literally sending that message that you are in a violent environment and you can't leave. Your nervous system will not relax there. If you can make the full choice, this is where I'm at. This isn't ideal, but I choose this for now. And I'm no longer going to fight my reality. I'm going to agree with reality as it is. That alone will cause a massive opening in your energy, in your autonomic nervous system, and things will start to improve just with that agreement with the reality that you're living in. And that can be such a hard thing, especially when you've been telling everybody I'm in mold and it's not good and da 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 da. And now you've got to like agree to that particular place. The identity doesn't like doing that.
No.
so, so, but I'm telling you, if you cannot get out, this is the most loving thing you could do for yourself is to agree that this is where you are right now. And you're going to do everything you can to improve your function where you're at. That is self love.
I the thought of that um, is kind of freeing for me because I'm usually the one who has to say I don't know what more we can do with this space, but to be able to tell people we really don't have to do any more with this space right now. Let's get you into a situation where you're healing, and
Mm-hmm.
so there are ways to do this without leaving this environment. And you're right. I think it spirals. It is. I'm dealing with a client right now where they went through mold remediation, and the remediation came back completely clean now. It's a perfectly clean house. Still can't live in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they haven't, from what I'm hearing, allowed themselves to believe that it can be possible to live in the house.
The house is the spot on the wall metaphor I just used earlier. They're
Wow.
still allergic to the spot on the wall. That spot didn't have mold, but there was an association there.
Can it get to a point where that association is so strong? And I have this with a client in Washington, D.C. area. She pulls into the driveway and she starts to get sick to her stomach.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I've had clients like that as well. It's the brain is so powerful. It's like It's like having a person in your life that you have a lot of animosity to, and they're gonna come over, and you start having a reaction before they even come over.
Mm.
The brain, can create physical symptoms based on emotional memory, and that's why you don't always know if your physical symptoms are from that actual toxin or the memory structures, that were created with that toxin. And so when she's reacting in the driveway, it must be the memory structure activation in the brain and not the actual toxin itself yet. And that is another powerful truth, that you don't know that you are necessarily reacting to mold when you walk into a new space, when just because you have the reaction. Your brain could have seen something that's familiar and unconsciously said, oh, this is like that, there must be mold, and I'm going to create that biochemistry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I had so my journey started 30 some years ago, and I was in commercial construction and architecture, and we had a situation on a project where our own workers were rushed to the hospital due to inhalation complications because the floor coating that was being used was literally making them ill and sucking all the oxygen out of the room. And so I knew nothing about chemical sensitivity at the time. I was really new in the business, and I learned the hard way, of course, all about it. But it's interesting because during that early stage, before even our workers got sick, we had people calling the job trailer complaining about the odors coming from the coatings. And I remember telling me, well, some people just complain when they see the cans open up. They
Mm.
just assume it's going to be bad, so they start complaining. And I kind of use that analogy with a lot of my clients. It's like sometimes just that connection, that mental connection between a
Mhm.
can opening up that you know probably has some garbage in there and having that physical reaction. And so the driveway, it's essentially a
Mhm.
bigger version of that can.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know you can't say because everybody's different, but the prognosis of somebody who pulls in their driveway and gets physically ill because of of the situation,
Yeah.
they can be healed. And
Mhm.
about how much time does it take?
Yeah. You know, okay, I've had some very extreme clients, and sometimes the more extreme they get to the rock bottom where they realize that they are willing to surrender all of their beliefs because it gets so bad that they don't have a choice. Some of them can make a pretty rapid turnaround when they get to rock bottom and literally say, I want to look at everything that's caused me to react to life like this. I had one woman who really made that choice, and she went right into her early family memories and realized, wow, I need to forgive my father. I need to open my heart. And within a short time, she had a much improved function by deciding that she was willing to do whatever it took because she'd lost everything. And so, it takes a lot of deep emotional work. But, in our program, I'd say, the first 4 to 6 months of being really diligent with these practices, you can make major gains. I mean, our statistics of people even after 3 months with mold, our functional statistic is, I believe, just a little over 40% improvement in function after just 3 months of the program. 40% is a pretty big improvement of function. And so that's hopeful. And, your brain is so plastic, and it's directly related to your emotional willingness to think, feel, behave differently. So when you get fully on board and you're like, you know what, I'm going to just go for this pathway of retraining, you go all in, you will see results.
That is wonderful, and it's so exciting for me to hear this and to be able to share this to others. It could have saved, I mean, 30 years of doing this. What I do, I can't imagine how many people could have been helped in those 30 years, and I look forward to the next 30 years of being able to share this with them. So I teased this earlier on about a way that
Mhm.
you can at least start the journey. And
Yep.
there's a program you put together that people can download when you can subscribe to the channel and like the episode and all that, but I'll have a link that you can actually go to actually go to your site and download some really helpful information.
Yeah. So about a year ago, I realized that, obviously I have the Primal Trust program that walks you through all of this, but a lot of people, like, I don't even know how to make that leap of understanding of like how this really severe physical reaction is related to my autonomic nervous system and brain. And so I wrote this book. It's called How Healing Happens. And we're going to put a link to this. It's free. It's about 130 pages and it's beautiful. It's got lots of diagrams. It has lots of practices, and it also has the science behind everything I'm talking about. You'll learn about the limbic system. You learn about something known as the polyvagal ladder. You'll learn about the autonomic nervous system, vagus nerve toning, somatics, and how it all relates to your condition through the lens of something known as cell danger response. And so it's something you can download and think of it like a free mini Primal Trust course to get you going and to get your understanding of what's happening, to be able to reframe your situation. And, from there, if it resonates, obviously we have a full program to walk you through it just step by step. It is a comprehensive program because this journey, it took a lot to get sick like this. And it takes a lot to retrain this nervous system. And I want people to understand how to put multiple tools together. Like this isn't just about brain retraining. It takes more than brain retraining for this sort of thing. You have to work on your vagus nerve. You have to work on something known as your somatic system, which is getting into your body and learning how to feel safe in the body when you're having a trigger. You have to learn how to address emotional wounding and have a healthy way of teaching the autonomic nervous system to respond to triggers. All of these things are part of this journey. And so, yeah, this book is a way to start understanding that.
Oh, thank you so much for offering that to our
Yeah.
listeners. And from that, if you find that there you do see some either early successes or better understanding of what is possible, then they can become a member of
Mhm.
your site. And tell us a little bit about that and what
Yeah.
that all
Yeah.
entails.
So I created Primal Trust sequentially, and I created it to mirror the journey that I went on to get my life back and to get my freedom. And we start with level one, regulate, which is a 7 module course where I teach you all of the nervous system tools that you need to honestly handle life, handle your MCS, handle whatever. And you're going to learn how to utilize them on a daily basis, or you'll learn how to use them when a trigger really hits you. So that's level one. You want to think of that as your nervous system toolkit. And then level two is really the heart of my program. And that is where we get into the emotional wounding and the identity that has been separate from who you really are. And we learn how to relate differently to not only ourself but to life, and that has such a massive effect on your limbic system of your brain, on your autonomic nervous system. It's where I see the deepest healing. We literally have a stat of 100% of the people who go through level 2 um, had a positive outcome. I mean, that's a crazy stat.
That's unbelievable.
And those that get through both level 1 and level 2, their overall results are, it's amazing. I feel super proud of this, of our program. And so I recommend that if you do this, that you commit. I'm going to get through this whole thing because I want to uncover all of it. I don't want to, just get a little better and then have life hit me again through some pathogen or whatever. We want to get underneath the root cause of why your nervous system was primed in the first place to respond this way. And then we actually have a level 3 program, which is where, like, once people have completed the journey, we continue to use this lens to work on relationships, getting back to work, living your life purpose, having healthy boundaries, all of the life things that we're always evolving in. And that's really fun. I love doing that work with people. And that's the work I'm still on. I'm still, trying to have the healthiest expression of myself. But it really is a complete process. And I walk you through it the entire way. So A lot of people come in and they just want like the brain retraining tool. And I'm like, that's just not going to cut it. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
It's not. It's not a one tool thing. It's a journey. It's a whole reprogramming of how you interact with life. And you follow the steps, you'll walk through it just fine.
In today's day and age of going to a physician and getting a pill to fix everything,
Mhm.
which it doesn't, it just causes more
Mm-mm.
problems. People want that quick response. People just
Yeah.
think, just give me something to fix me so I can move on with my life. The thing is, this is your life. What you're dealing with right now is your life. And everything else isn't as important, because if you can't fix yourself, how are you going to be a nurturer to your children? How are you going to be and I don't care about monetary success, but how are you going to earn a living to be able to take care of your family and all these things and take
Yeah.
care of yourself? It's all connected. And so
Yeah.
if you had one final message, and I want this message to be specifically to the people who are too smart to have to
Mm.
do things like this, because I can't tell you how many people I'll talk about these things and they'll say, no, no. It's like religion. That's for the weak minded, whatever.
Yeah.
There are so many people who think they're too smart to go through a process like this, yet they don't do anything. They never improve. So,
Yeah.
what would your message be to them?
Well, I was that person. I wanna tell you that I understood a lot of the nervous system for many years before I implemented any of these things. I had a doctoral level physical therapy degree. I used to work with chronic pain, which is mind-body relationship. Did I apply any of this to myself for a decade? No, because I was too smart. I
Mm.
decided I knew better, and I decided, no, I need to find, the right herbal treatment for Lyme and the right strategy for mold. And, I there is a part of me, a very smart part of me that had a strategy of fixing myself by avoiding the underlying cause, and it was so smart that I gave all of my allegiance to my brain and my intellect, and it felt like I had a therapist that said, "Kathleen, I believe that 80% of your Lyme disease symptoms would fall away if you would regulate your autonomic nervous system." I literally screamed at him, gave him the middle finger, and told him to stop gaslighting me. Guess what, you guys? He was right. He was right. He was absolutely right, because when I started doing this work, my Lyme disease symptoms, etcetera, just started to fall away. This very intelligent part of me needed to yield to a deeper truth that I wasn't being taught from my medical paradigm, that the autonomic nervous system has a much bigger component to what was going on than I was told. And so, for those of you who are really smart, the first couple modules of my program are made for the smarty pants. I give you the science to make what I'm trying to teach you unquestionable. And for some people, it's like too much science. And I'm like, it's because I know people like me need to be convinced. So I will teach you the evidence based science and background of this. And and to further justify, like, we are teaching physicians all over the world. I'm literally starting a practitioner training program next week because doctors understand. They say, you know what? This is what I needed to do first. And I'm now giving primal trust first. I'm stacking it with my protocols because my protocols actually stick. So, for those of us who are too smart, the new wave is going to be autonomic nervous system rebalancing. And I'm quite sure you're going to want to be at the front runner of that if you like to know the latest in science and healing. So, that's my spiel for the smarty pants.
Well, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So many people get into like analysis paralysis and they just don't do anything. Others will say, listen, I've got a doctorate level degree in this, that, or the other. I know what I'm doing. I've looked at the research myself, and this is not going to work. For you to say exactly what you did really speaks volumes. And so I really
Yeah.
encourage people to kind of put their pride aside a bit
Hmm.
and understand that you don't know everything,
Hmm.
and that there are people out there who truly do uh, wants to help and know how to help. And
Yeah,
again, putting pride aside is one of the biggest things, and that's tough. It's a very
it is.
tough first step. But
Yeah.
again, follow the link below, get that the free resource manual, and kind of start from there and see how it goes.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate being able to speak so openly. And, for those of you that might be a little triggered or offended, like I was that person. So I get it. I get it. And I absolutely believe that this process that I'm describing about can turn any situation around if you put your heart into it.
Excellent. Kathleen, thank you so much for being on the show, and look forward to having you back on to hear about the practitioner program
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.